Hello, everybody. It's wonderful to be here, even though I'm not here. I hope you're doing okay. Here's the thing. So we're going to be talking about immigration today, or I guess you will be talking about immigration. And I wanted to run through just some details, kind of like the history of immigration in our country and some of the policies that are leading to some bigger debates. So as we go through this, please pay attention as best you can. I'll try to make it brief, and then after you're done with this, of course, you're going to be going onto Canvas and having a little discussion. So, woo! Okay, here we go. So basically, prior to the 1880s, borders were pretty open in the country. After from the late 1880s into the early 1900s, we started to limit that, however. And unfortunately, a lot of the limitations were sort of based on like racism. So we had laws like the Chinese Exclusion Act, which kept a lot of Chinese immigrants from joining us, basically from the West Coast. We were also very selective when it came to who we let in regarding their like education level, their economic level, things like that. The world was a lot more racist back then. It continues to be, but at least the laws we have try to avoid that as much as possible now. But back then, we just embrace it unabashedly. From the 20s through the 60s, we started to limit the people who could come in from outside of Europe. And in 1965, there's the bell. In 1965, we signed a new law, and what it did was it changed some of that race-based immigration restrictions to more non-racist things regarding what a person could contribute to our country, sort of more economic things and things like that. As a result of that change, we saw immigration go up a lot after the 60s. And so basically, you can read the text here. This is great for a lot of people, and a lot of our nation has been built as a result from these people joining us. But the difficulty is that it's also resulted in a longer immigration process, which is partly why nowadays we see the rise of illegal immigration. So imagine if we all of a sudden have a more open door policy, the lines to get in that door are going to naturally grow as people realize, hey, I could get in. Well, as that line grows, the process actually becomes slower. And so one way to circumvent that slow line is find a back door. And so that's why a lot of times we see immigration nowadays is so controversial because of the way it relates to illegal immigration. So one thing that comes up in the past couple of decades is the idea of a sanctuary city. And I want to watch this video because it explains what a sanctuary city is. And so here we go.
In the wake of a San Francisco shooting that garnered national attention, the immigration debate has centered on sanctuary cities. The term sanctuary city refers to local governments who limit its assistance in federal immigration enforcement. Sanctuary policies began to formalize in the 1980s after a movement of churches sought to provide shelter and resources for unauthorized Central American immigrants who fled civil war and violence. Sanctuary policies differ from city to city, but generally the local policies instruct city employees and law enforcement to not ask the immigration status of criminal suspects. Proponents for sanctuary cities say this policy is necessary in balancing public safety with a respect for civil rights. By not inquiring a criminal's immigration status, proponents say it maintains trust in immigrant communities, making it easier to fight crime. Opponents argue that sanctuary policies endanger local communities. By ignoring a criminal's immigration status, it effectively shields convicted criminals from deportation, releasing some back into the community. According to the Center for Immigration Studies, more than 200 cities and counties in the United States have policies that make them immigration sanctuaries. The report concluded that sanctuary policies caused the release of more than 8,000 criminally convicted illegal immigrants, sought by federal immigration officials over an 8-month period. As the debate over sanctuary cities continues, Congress could be forced to address the issue. Soon, the Senate will consider the Davis-Oliver Act, a bill which would require state and local governments to comply with federal immigration laws.
So anyway, you get the idea that currently there are cities that are, because there's a lack of federal enforcement of immigration law, these cities have chosen to say, listen, if the federal government's not going to come in here and force us to follow their laws and deport these citizens, we're not going to. And there are reasons for that. The idea, first of all, a little more background. is that we have over 200 cities in the United States. The first one was LA in 1979. The people who support this new policy says that, well, if illegal immigrants are afraid that by interacting with police officers they may be sort of found out and deported, well, they might not contribute to fighting crime, reporting theft, reporting the kinds of crimes that you or I would report, as natural born citizens or as immigrant citizens. So that can lead to problems, higher crime rates, problems of that nature, problems for the city. The opponents, of course, say that sometimes those lawbreakers, I should say, sometimes those immigrants are, well, if they're illegal, they're already lawbreakers, and they make a connection, justifiable or not. They draw the connection to say if you've broken a law to get into this country, well, maybe you're more prone to breaking laws in general, and maybe you're just a worse person, so we don't want you here. And so as a result, they're afraid that sanctuary cities is actually going to increase crime rates and endanger the citizens in the city who are there legally. So arguments for this, I mentioned one of them. Sanctuary cities are there because some people think that it actually help fight crime. You're also going to see that, I'm going to explain, I already explained this point. So basically the idea is that if they feel safe to interact with police because they know they won't be deported, then they'll interact more, and it can help lower crime rates if more people are reporting crimes and standing up to fight against them. Also, there are studies that have been very conclusive to see that illegal immigrants are no more likely to commit crime than native-born citizens. So that's trying to draw heat against that connection that the opponents are trying to make, to say if you're in here illegally, you're a criminal, you might break other crimes. Studies have shown that's not necessarily true. And then finally, this is a big one. Illegal immigrants help the economy. Not only do they spend money that help businesses, they also work and they provide goods and services that natural citizens often take for granted. And if we were to deport them, businesses would suffer, and a lot of the products that we like might not be produced anymore. Now, there's this video clip. It's interesting, but I'm going to skip it. And if we have time, I'll come back and we'll watch it. But basically, this lady, she does a really good job. She interviews illegal immigrants in San Francisco and gets their take on why sanctuary cities are a positive thing. And pretty much, it's referring to the things we just listed. Now, the arguments against sanctuary cities, again, I've been hinting at some of them. The idea is that people suggest that these cities are going to be places where illegal immigrants who are more severe criminals, beyond just entering the country illegally, maybe they're also felons. We're afraid that they may flock to these cities, and it'll actually create a higher rate of crime than there would naturally be if people were prone to live wherever they wanted to live. So it's kind of like a magnet, people are afraid, that might draw criminals to the city because these criminals know that they don't have to worry as much about being caught and deported. You're also going to see that people argue that there's something fundamentally wrong about a city choosing to ignore national law and sort of just like do what they want to do. So there's a principle behind the idea of like, when you're a city, you're expected to follow state and national law. And for you to make an ordinance simply because the laws aren't being enforced, if you're going to make an ordinance that flies in the face of that, well, it feels disrespectful. It feels like you're sort of skirting the proper levels of government because apparently you think you know what's better. And then finally, there is the argument that illegal immigrants actually hurt the economy. It's the complete opposite of the argument in favor of it. There's this claim that because many illegal immigrants, in fact, maybe not most, but many of them do not pay full or the correct types of taxes, they get public goods like schooling, like travel on roads that have been paid for by government. And the idea is that when they don't pay for those things, you're actually causing paying citizens to have to make up for the taxes they're not paying. It's an argument against it. This is another video. For the sake of time, we're going to skip. So what I want you to do is I want you to go to Canvas and follow the directions there and basically tell us, what do you think about sanctuary cities? Have a good day, everybody. Thanks.